So basically, we've been implementing this law. It's not a city ordinance, it's a state law. I'll go through the full presentation to kind of explain it shortly. I've been with the city for a couple years now. I'm Jason. By the way, I'm the Jason referenced in most of your letters, so I understand why you're looking at me like that. But primarily what I do here is exactly this. Certificates of inspection for assembly spaces, including schools, bars, liquor licenses, and now apartment buildings, properties, so on and so forth. This started primarily going after some of the larger buildings that were without certificates for quite some time, and then expanded further and further. All right, so I'm going to run through kind of what I came up with here. These questions represent the typical questions we get on a day-by-day basis. And then obviously what I'm hoping for is questions from you. The one request that Holyoke Media here has is if you do wish to ask a question, they do ask you to step up to the mic to make sure the question gets recorded properly. Therefore, anybody at home listening to it or down the road can at least hear what the question was if I don't properly reference it back when I give the answer. All right? So I broke it down into three main questions. First of all, why? Right? Why are these required? So state building code, which is Mass 780 CMR, which is an adoption of an international building code with some modifications. One of the modifications the state made is this 110.7, which references table 110 here. Okay, so essentially what the building official is tasked to do is periodically inspect buildings based off of their use classification. So what I've put in here is essentially every single use group that we are required. This building is one of those that we're required to inspect because it's a place of assembly. And coming down here, the one that pertains to pretty much everybody here would be this R2 use, which is a multifamily. So I'll scroll down to the note in a second, but typically the certificates we issue, if everything is up to date, correct, and meets all current codes, we would issue that certificate for 5 years. Okay, that's the maximum there on the right. So in the building code, it's broken down into two separate categories. There's a residential code, which covers 1 and 2 family dwellings and some townhouses. And then there is a base code, or what we call our building code, which is everything 3 families and up. The state building code, for all intents and purposes, considers a 3-family to be a commercial property, which is why it's required under this table 110.7, or I'm sorry, rule 110.7, table 110, to be a multifamily and subject to the same rules as everything else. Okay, so the note here that I highlighted, and I've mentioned this perhaps to some of you on the phone, it is the responsibility of the building owner as defined in Chapter 2, basically the person that owns the building, to meet the inspection requirements in this table for continued use and occupancy. The maximum certification period specified in the table is intended to provide administrative flexibility, meaning we can go up to 5 years, anywhere from 1, 2, 3, 18 months, whatever we deem appropriate. There are some certificates we issue for a year. There are some certificates we issue for 6 months. If there's certain aspects that need to be updated or replaced, for instance, we give a temporary certificate to allow for that update to occur. Okay, but if everything, like I said at the start, if everything is in place, we can go up to 5 years, which is what we typically do for those that meet the requirement. Right there it says, yep. For example, our 2 building could be certified for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. So how do you apply? Most of you, when you got the letters, had the application packet inside. If you don't, some letters, actually more letters went out today, which should finish our full list of people that are going to receive them. But if whatever you lose the application or whatever, I put the link in here, where the application is located. So what should you expect? There are 4 main questions on that application form. Most people get most excited about the sprinkler system and the monitored fire alarm system. I will tell you, question 1, monitored fire alarm systems by current code are only required for buildings with 6 or more, and 6 or more units, it should say, sorry, and is a mixed-use building, i.e. some portion commercial, some portion residential. So for most of you, especially the recent letters have all been for 3 families. Question 1 would not apply to you. You check no and move on. Okay. So I know there's a couple people in the audience where this would apply to, but I've spoken to you directly already, so I think we understand that rule. Question 2 regarding the sprinkler systems is even for bigger buildings, typically 10 units or bigger, or if there's some sort of liquor license involved in the occupancy of that building. Ever since the Station nightclub fire in Rhode Island, quite a while ago, the state has really strictly enforced sprinkler systems in any sort of nightclub or bar, which obviously precludes most of you in this room as that requirement. And for most of you in this room, I would assume you don't have a building size big enough where this requirement would be. So if you have a standard 3-family, which again, where most of the letters came from most recently, this would not apply to you. You can check no and move on, okay? And then I just put a note here for those owners that need the systems above and intend to comply. We can issue temporary certificates, typically 1 year, while the work is being scheduled and completed. A signed contract for the services is generally required to obtain that. So we're not just handing out these temp certificates. We do require some proof of intention to comply. All right, so for what mostly applies to everybody in this room, maybe not all, but most. Question 3 deals with the exterior egress system. So what does that mean? An egress essentially is a pathway from an apartment to the outside. It's a very simplified definition of that. It gets more complicated in the code. It has 4 components, exit, discharge, so on and so forth, exit access. But basically, does somebody that occupies the building need to use an exterior porch or stair system to reach a place of safety? So if you have an exterior deck with stairs down to the ground, then question 3 would be a yes. You would need to have a certified or registered design professional, I should say, come out and do an inspection of that porch system to certify that it meets 2 things. It meets safety and structural stability. So this is a state requirement for this registered design professional to come out and do this, okay? We I don't want to say all building officials, but most building officials are not registered design professionals. We're not architects, we're not engineers. We are trained in the code, and we are trained to essentially comply with the code, but we don't certify structures as structurally sound, especially for a 5-year period. Basically, what we're asking this architect or engineer to do is give his or her opinion that the structure as it sits right now will be safe and structurally sound for the 5-year period for which we intend to issue this certificate. So that's a big task to ask somebody to sign off on. So that stamp, that license is required to make that certification. So I gave some scenarios here because, like I said, every building is different in some way. So some people have all internal stairways. So you leave the apartment, you go down an internal staircase, you reach a door, you open the door, you step on the ground, you're outside. That does not need a certification from a registered design professional. If you come down the hallway and you exit out to a porch, and then you take the steps from that porch to the ground, that porch would need a registered design professional to sign off on it. Now, there's a lot of confusion over what it means to be external. So if it was a porch that was enclosed at some point, and is not necessarily part of the building envelope, meaning it's not a heated portion of your building. It was just an exterior porch built out of wood with wooden supports, and it was simply enclosed for purposes of to keep the bugs out or something like that. It's still an exterior porch, even though it's enclosed, so it still needs to be certified. So you can ask away on that. And what I normally do when people call is we have a very good online GIS system. So I'll pull up a picture of your house and try to look at what it is that's on your house and tell you yes or no based off of what I can tell from the picture. All right, but there are a lot of enclosed porches where you step from a heated or a cooled area, technically, out onto a porch. Even though that porch is enclosed, it would still need to be certified. Okay. So we do have a list on our website of suggested registered design professionals. And I perhaps shouldn't say suggested, but it's ones that we've worked with in the past, and we offer up as an option for you if you wish to use. Also on this, and I might as well open it for you. So basically, there are a few people here that we've used or have been used by building owners in the past. At the very bottom of this document, there are the websites of where every single registered professional engineer and registration of architects is located, where you can go on and pick anybody you want to use if they're registered with the state. It doesn't have to be any of the three above. This was a document that was made a few years ago and offered up as an option because a lot of people are having a hard time finding somebody to use. Essentially, what that registered design professional is going to do is going to sign this egress affidavit for us. I should say for you, which you will supply to us. So what the affidavit is doing is saying that they inspected whatever portion of that egress system is required to be inspected, located at. They sign it. They give the registration number, and then they stamp it, okay? That is them, and it has to be notarized too, to ensure it's the right person signing it, so some random person doesn't just sign it for obvious reasons. And then they turn that into us, normally with a report that goes along with it to say, here's what I found, here are some potential deficiencies I suggested to be fixed, they were fixed, and this is why I'm issuing this affidavit. Okay, so that's question 3. If you don't have, and I gave some examples here, obviously this is an exterior egress system with exterior deck, just a sample of a fire escape. Obviously it's an exterior component of the building that needs to be inspected. Why is this important? This is a very, very famous photo that was taken in Back Bay in Boston. 1975, won a Pulitzer Prize for it. It shows what can potentially happen. Okay, there's a fire in the building. There's a firefighter trying to access the person on that fire escape to get them to safety, and that fire escape collapsed beneath their feet, and they fell to the ground. Okay, so it is exactly what, when I go out to a building and I'm going to be issuing a certificate saying that this building is safe for occupancy, it's the type of thing that I lose sleep over because I need to feel comfortable that the building that we're issuing the certificate for is technically safe. Okay. Last one, question 4, and this is probably the point of most contention for most of you because most buildings don't have them. But emergency lights and exit signs are required. It is in the code. That's the reason why there is no yes or no next to that question on the application form, because it doesn't matter if it's yes or no, you need to have them. Okay. There is no set format in which these need to be installed. A lot of people ask me, do they need to be on each landing? Do they need to be halfway between the landings? Where do they need to be? All the code says is that that emergency lighting system needs to provide the minimum amount of illumination necessary to provide adequate passage to that place of safety. And technically, the way the code is written is 1 foot candle, which is essentially enough light made by 1 match. Okay, so it's not a ton of light, but it's enough where somebody can actually traverse that egress system in a time of power failure and get out to safety. And vice versa for emergency personnel coming in. Obviously, they normally have headlights, headlamps, so on and so forth, but it also provides some safety to them coming in to handle whatever emergency is going on. And then the 90-minute rule. Okay, so technically the way the code is written is a qualified individual is certifying that the emergency lighting system in place runs for a minimum of 90 minutes. So what the code says is when the power fails, all those emergency lights and exit signs need to stay illuminated for a minimum of 90 minutes. What, for most of you that don't have any emergency lights, when newly installed, those are designed to last for more than 90 minutes, so just installing them covers the 90-minute load test because they're brand new. Okay? So you don't have to put them in and then have them tested. Essentially, what's happening is someone is killing the power to the building at 8 o'clock, and then at 9:30, while sitting there saying, okay, they're still on. A 90-minute load test, that's essentially what it is, okay? So I gave some examples. You see them, those are exit signs, but you see them in commercial buildings, restaurants. They're the double-headed light fixtures that, these are, you don't have to buy these, but those are some examples. You can do them combined. So the exit sign needs to take place wherever the exit door is located. So it doesn't need to be the full path of travel all the way down, just essentially notifying people this is the exit door, you're headed to the outside. That needs to be illuminated as well. Typical workaround for that is either a combo unit as shown here, or it can even be a placard that is illuminated by the light itself, as long as somebody can read that it says exit. Okay. All right, so if you don't mind, I'll do questions at the end. I'll get through and I'll go back as necessary. We're almost there. So question 3, now what? Now I submitted my application. I have all the appropriate documentation. What do I do next? So once we have all the information, once we have all the documentation, somebody in our office will reach out to you to schedule an inspection. Some mutually agreeable time that works for you, works for us. Most of the people in the office work full-time. I'm just a part-time employee, but I'm here every morning. But if an afternoon is best for you, then there are inspectors that can come out and do that for you. So essentially, things we'll be checking for. We're checking for proper size and properly secured handrails. As they go down the stairs, is there a handrail for them to hold on to while they go down? Is it going to break? Is it going to fall off? Is it non-existent whatsoever? There has to be a handrail. We're checking mechanical areas for proper clearances, meaning you can't have a bunch of stuff located in front of your boiler or down the sides of your boiler for safety issues. There can't be stuff located in front of your panels for access for maintenance. So we're checking for things like that. Making sure in that stairway and in those hallways there's a minimum 36-inch path clearance to make sure you get all the way down without something being in your way. We go to a lot of buildings where people put dressers out, or people will have mattresses kind of on exterior egresses. That type of stuff needs to be removed to make sure the egress is clear, etc. So essentially we follow a checklist. The checklist has 44 items we're looking for. Cover things like the condition. Are there combustibles all over the wall that prevent or present a fire hazard? Are there broken steps that someone is going to trip on, or someone might have a problem or miss? We see a lot of missing balusters, missing broken bull noses on a stair that presents a trip hazard. Fire protection, we'll check to make sure your smoke and CO detectors in those hallways are current. They have to be within 10 years. So we will test them in the hallways only. And if for some reason we believe they might be older, once you've seen enough, you know which ones are the old ones, kind of the newer ones. We'll take them off, check the date, make sure they're current. We'll be checking things like that. And then around boilers and furnaces, are the flues still connected? Has it rotted out from the actual flue liner where it's just leaking carbon monoxide into the building? We're checking for those. So essentially what we're doing is the final check. Somebody came and did the lights, somebody came and did the egress certification. What we're going through is just checking all the other little stuff to make sure it's a safe place to occupy. So I gave some yeses and nos here. Proper handrails, things like we're looking for broken balusters where somebody could fall through. We're looking for clear areas around your boilers and furnaces, not something like this where everything is located all over and you can't get to access anything, and it presents obviously a fire hazard as well. Doesn't mean you can't have stuff in your basement, it just means keep it away from mechanicals, so on and so forth. And then finally, once the inspection is completed and passed, the building official will fill out the appropriate paperwork and send you a certificate for you to keep for your records. As stated in the original code reference, it's your responsibility to ensure that prior to the expiration on that certificate, you fill out the paperwork to kind of go through it again. For most of you, you won't see us again for 5 years, which should be somewhat good. But that's the idea, all right? And then most people do anyway. Any questions ever, call the number. There's actually 4 building officials in the office that can all answer your questions. We try to do so in a timely manner. Some days we get 10 or 12, some days there's a few, there's quite a bit. So, and then obviously we're out doing inspections as well to try to keep up. All right, the other big question, I didn't put it on here and I'm sorry, but why now?
That's one of my questions.
Yep. So why now? So the only answer I have to that is for many years, the building department, the code inspections office, however you want to look at it, was very understaffed. Okay, for a number of years it was one person for a city of this size, which is completely inadequate. There's no way for that one person to be able to handle the day-to-day decks and additions and windows and roofs and so on and so forth, to also try to cover apartment buildings and go through these certificates, okay? So we have been lucky, and well, I guess lucky is a subjective word. We have been lucky recently to have a 4-member board of officials, building officials at this point, in which we've been able to kind of go after these buildings that are in non-compliance. I will be honest with you, there are 673 buildings in this city, just residential buildings in this city, that qualify as required to have these certificates, and only 93 right now have them. Okay, so it is very out of date, and we are attempting to bring it up to date. The letters were sent not as a threat. They were sent essentially as a reminder of the property owner's responsibility to abide by the law. Okay, it is a state law, and I will 100% agree. A lot of people say, well, we didn't know. Fair enough. I truly don't believe, and this is going to be posted on the website so they can come after me, but I truly don't believe the state itself does a very good job notifying property owners of what their responsibilities are. So what the letter was a letter to you to say, you're in non-compliance, please come into compliance. Okay? For most of the recent letters, for the 3 families, first notices are a 30-day period. What we have been offering to everybody is, with the submission of your application, we add an additional 30 days onto that. So taking into consideration the snail mail route we have to take, which we're required to send certified mail. So imagine we've sent 560 letters to the tune of about $8 a piece to mail them certified mail through the USPS. So yeah, We have sent these notices out. We grant about 7 days for that notice to arrive, 30 days from that, because the 30 days starts upon receipt. Then, if you submit the application, we add another 30 days. So 67 days is kind of the starting point for most people that indicate their intention to comply. Now, when I first started this, there were a lot of properties that have been issued these letters before, and those letters were simply ignored. Okay? So what we sent out were essentially second notices, in which we only granted them 7 days to comply because you've been made aware of this situation, chosen not to comply. Therefore, we're going to give you less time to comply because you should have known. All right? But the first round of 3 family notices that went out, unfortunately, still said the 7 days. So for those people that called in, we informed them it should have said 30. Our records show 30. Please disregard that portion, but that's kind of where that came from. Okay, so I think that covers what I expected to answer, and hopefully did so okay. I am happy to answer as many questions as you have for as long as it takes. So anybody that wants to start, again, what they requested is you come up to the mic, please ask away, and I'll do my best to answer.
Hi. Thank you very much for having this. I think it's definitely needed, and a lot of people have questions. I don't own a 3-family. I own a 1-family, but I'm here. One is a city councilor that gets phone calls about the letters. And again, I've seen the paperwork. When you say letter, I think it should have been a cover letter, like, Dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith, enclosed, please find, and explain it a little bit more. And then I think what I heard you say was, as far as egress goes, if a 3-family, if the second floor has its separate door, they can walk down that stairs and get out, that's a good thing? That's okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, so they don't necessarily have to have a fire escape on the side of the house going to the second floor if they have that egress coming down
Well,
and their separate door?
Every unit needs 2 forms of egress.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you're talking about a second egress, or that one goes straight to the outside, and then there's another one that perhaps is combined with somebody else.
Or like a back door kind of thing?
The front door, back door type of situation, yep.
Okay, and right now you're just doing 3 families?
Oh, we're doing everything.
Oh, 2 families as well?
No, I'm sorry, 3 families and up. 2 families do not apply.
How come?
That's how the code is written, so.
'Cause you might find some bad things on 2 families as well.
100% agree.
Yeah.
The way the code is broken down, there is a residential code, which is 1 and 2 families.
Yeah.
They have their own rules, some townhouses as well. And then the base code, or what we call the base code, the commercial code is 3 families and above.
Okay.
And this rule only applies to 3
Okay.
families and above.
And what about absentee landlords and nonprofits that have 3 families or more?
Everybody that has a 3-family in this city that doesn't have a certificate was sent a notice.
Even nonprofits?
Absolutely.
Okay, and if they fail to abide by the letter, they'll get a second letter? The nonprofits or the absentee landlords?
Yes. I mean, the short answer is yes. I'm not sure when yet, because
Okay.
we just sent out the final batch today.
Okay.
So we're going to wait some time before we send out second notices, yep.
Okay. And is registered design professional the same as an architect?
Architect is an example of a registered design professional, but not only an architect. An
Okay.
engineer would qualify as well.
All right, and let's see if there's anything else. Affordability, what if people, they weren't expecting this, obviously, and what if some people are in financial problems that they can't afford all of this?
I completely empathize with that situation, Patty, I do. Unfortunately, the code is not written that way. So it is still something that needs to be met.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that we can create some opportunities to help those that perhaps need it,
Yeah,
but we're not in that phase now. It just, what we're basically stating is what is required,
Right,
and, this is what we're looking for, so.
okay. And I think that's all I have, but again, I wanted to thank you for this, and hopefully a lot of these people will be able to get this done, but they may not be able to afford to get it done, because this was such a surprise to them. So,
Understood.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Hi there. I have
Hi.
a question. You had indicated that there were 44 items that you look for when you come and do an inspection. Do we have access on your website to the 44 items?
We can post it, sure. That's a
Okay.
valid question, yeah. But basically, it covers everything we talked about, but broken down into smaller categories.
Okay. Thank
Yep.
you very much.
Yep.
In talking about the list, she just says the 44 categories. Does that mean that in this inspection's only good for 5 years? That we're gonna be re-inspected within 5 years, depending on the certificate, for all these items forever?
Yes. Every
That's what-
5 years.
That's what it means?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Outside egresses,
Yep.
that is just porch and decking, do those need exit lights as well? If it's outdoors with natural light?
Short answer is yes.
So I have
Um,
exit signs on my
Longer
porches?
answer is it depends.
Okay.
If it, especially if it's an enclosed exterior,
I
it
understand
needs
that.
to be
That's
lighted.
no
or
problem.
needs to be
I-
lit.
If the decking out, that's open to everything. That's why I want to, I've got to put exit signs on my porches in front of my house.
Exit signs definitely not on the outside porches, but it is supposed to provide illumination to those exterior porches as well.
Okay.
We've been primarily focused on the interior staircases for the point that it's even harder. There's any potential for natural light or a street light to kind of,
Okay.
to do that. But the way the code is written, any path of egress needs to be illuminated for the 90 minutes in the event of a power failure.
Okay. As I get a structural engineer, and I've priced out a couple of them, and some of them were way up, and some people who were on the list were not doing it anymore, were telling me it should be much cheaper. After 5 years, do I have to get another engineer out there again? 'Cause,
Yes.
you do, so nothing's changed in it, and you guys are gonna inspect. I mean, is this much different than having a Section 8 inspection I used to years ago, and they straddle the toilets and whatnot and tell
Well-
me I gotta,
It's definitely much different in the sense that we don't go into any individual units. All we're inspecting are common areas, hallways,
and
stairways,
they did as well,
basements.
and they did as well.
Well, Section 8 would go into individual units.
On
Yeah,
top of
in
common
top
area,
of, yeah.
on top of common area.
Yep,
So I'm looking at an engineer every 5 years.
yes.
So my next question is, what is the ramifications for noncompliance? Am I looking at a $100 fine as opposed to paying an engineer $3,000 to come out there every 5 years?
Well, it is, the way the city ordinance is written is it's up to $300 for each offense. Each day violates or constitutes a separate offense.
Okay, all right.
So
All
it
right,
would be up to $300
I mean,
per day.
believe me, I definitely want to comply, don't get me wrong, I just, yeah, the Section 8 used to have inspectors that would come out and inspect, and they'd either pass or fail, and I would take care of everything. I just have a whole problem with the structural engineer. My house has been there since the 1800s, and it's passed Section 8 before and so forth, but now I gotta dump $3 or $4 grand every 5 years to have some guy look at the same thing again.
I can't speak to the cost, I'm sorry.
No, I get you.
I would, if it is 3 or 4 grand, I would agree with the people that are no longer doing it, that it seems, especially for a 3-family,
It's-
seems outrageous.
Right.
Obviously, there are apartment buildings with 35, 36 units that have 5 levels. I could maybe somewhat justify that cost for the extended amount of inspection. So I can't really speak to the cost, only the fact
I
that
get
it
you.
is required. I get it.
I get it. All right, just want to know, thank you.
Yep.
I read on the letter that there was a possible way of exemptions.
exemptions on the
It
letter?
said at the bottom of our city letter. I didn't bring my copy. First notice, we can appeal it.
Oh, yeah. You can appeal to the state board, yep.
And what would that, I mean, you're giving us a lot of information on this, how about appealing it? If there's a legal way that we can get around it,
I would, if
Does-
that's the avenue you wish to pursue, I would encourage you to do
I
so.
mean, is that an opportunity that you're gonna, present to us as well?
Well, it's in the letter, so I think it has been presented, but you have a right to, under the state building code, to appeal to the Board of Building Regulations and Standards, which is the state board, which you can go to them and say, you don't believe your building should be exempt or should be subject to
Because of
this
the
rule.
families here, every 5 years, and the exorbitant price is, I don't think that's what Boyle's about, not really.
Okay.
I don't want to be pretending to give legal advice at all, but my understanding is you cannot collect rent if you do not have a certificate of occupancy. So I would just caution people that if your tenants know that, they can go back and they can ask the court to give a refund of all the rent that's been paid. So,
I'm not sure of the legal aspect of that either.
Are we talking about a certificate of occupancy?
Certificate of inspection.
That's okay.
can you have it?
A certificate of occupancy was issued when the building was first constructed.
But if you don't have a certificate of inspection, I believe that you can't have, right? If
way-
you don't get one, then you revoke the certificate of occupancy?
Technically-
Eventually, I mean, you're not going to do it in 30 days, but is that the long run that happens?
Officially, per the building code, that building should not be occupied without a certificate of inspection.
Hi, Jason.
Hi.
My name's Linda. So I've lived in my house growing up as a kid and then purchased it. So I've been living and squatting for 65 years. So with that being said, the 30 days, and I understand because I went down to meet you the day I got it. I freaked out and went down to meet you. We want to do what's right. People that live in our house have lived there for 35 to 40 years. So we want it up to code. But those signs, this is my home. I don't live in a business like that. You remember me, I was like, oh my God, I got to have an exit sign flashing. So I reached out to an electrician, someone that's already been issued a certificate from you guys. And I made him wait for me because I said, let Jason go there, see what he really wants to make sure we're doing it right before you come to me and we play the back and forth game.
Yep.
So he just told me that he did a home and that you went out and it was okay. So my 30 days are up May 29th on my birthday. Thank you very much.
Happy birthday.
So now I have to reach out to him and say, come on out. So for everybody, like it's a big expense. We probably can afford it, but I don't know if everybody can. So the city should look into maybe some kind of steps to help the city. I mean, we're 3-family homes. A lot of us have owned our homes all our lives. Kind of, you guys dropped the ball, not you particularly, but your department. So for 37 years or whatever that it's been on the books and it's not been collected, it kind of stinks that we get that 30-day notice. I know you said that you're going to help us and, extend it, and I appreciate that, but for everybody, it's kind of a sticky situation. The cost of everything has gone up, life in general. It's a tough thing, and I know you don't have all those answers, and I know you can't help us absorb that cost, but I was kind of hoping the mayor was going to be here tonight to come up with some plans, some ideas to give people a chance to get those things done. I feel my house is safe. You talked about going into the basement. My tenants have washers and dryers, those stackables, because it was my mom's apartment, so they're there. So one of my questions for Paul Belayo, who's the electrician that I'm going to use, he said it varies if tenants use your basement or they don't.
Exactly.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if my
the
tenant-
tenants have access to the basement, then
Then
it needs to
yes.
be lighted, yep.
Yeah, and if tenants don't, then no, because they can use their stuff in their apartments.
It's not a common form of egress. so
Okay,
yeah, it
yep, I wanted
doesn't-
to make sure
yep.
about that. And that egress word, for me, just isn't a word that I'm used to.
Yep.
So again, I think Patty brought that up. So I don't have an outside staircase. We have insides for
Yep.
both sides. So I know that everybody has to have two ways out, which we do. But, and I think you tried to explain it to me, and maybe you were frustrated with me, but going out the door, and I said to you, well, then the answer to that is yes for everybody, because you open a door, there's an outside porch, and you step down 2 stairs, and then you're in the driveway. So that's still considered an outside porch.
If you're on a porch, if you
Anything
open
you
the,
step on that's not concrete without a step is considered an outside porch, or an outside,
well, technically even concrete, but, so, if you don't exit directly to the ground itself,
right.
then yes.
So, and pretty much, there's not too many houses that you just open the door and walk out on. So that makes us,
Or I should say, or you open the door to a set of stairs that leads,
that leads
only a
out.
set of stairs that
And then
leads
you had said something about lighting just about the size of a match, and his question was, is outside light? Well, obviously, if you're out and there's no walls, there's gotta be street lights and you gotta have enough light. So we're not gonna also have this in our home, because my house isn't, I don't consider it a building, it's a home, I'm gonna have that lit all the time, and that's
Right.
my
Understood.
new decoration in my home, right?
Well, again, like I said, you could.
I could
Wait.
decoupage it, I could
if
decorate it, I could craft
If
it.
it has to be an illuminated.
Yep.
So what we've been doing
Yep,
is if the light comes on and provides light to
Yep.
the placard exit sign,
yep,
then that works as well.
right. Well, right after I talked to you, I called the electrician, he came right down, he's wonderful, he's in the city of Holyoke, if anybody wants to use him. You can't say that, I can. He came right out, and he already has gotten many calls from families, and like I said, now that I know you've already looked and said, yep, I like this, I don't like that, rather than playing that game. So because my 30 days is up on the 29th, he's already came, he knows what he needs to purchase. So it's not completed, but do I still fill that out, go pay you the amount of money, even though he hasn't come and done the work?
Yeah,
Or-
that's a great question. Thank you, Linda. So I know on the document it says, once all documentation is received, submit the application. So what we've been suggesting to people is go ahead and send it in beforehand. And I'm sorry for the contrasting nature of that statement, but as an indication that you intend to comply, that's when we add the additional 30 days, so your 30 days doesn't run out.
Yeah,
And what will happen is the permit will be entered, the application will be entered into the system, and then you'll receive a notice back from one of our clerks or me, somebody saying, thank you for your application, we are still awaiting these items.
Okay.
And then you would send those items back to us, at which time we would schedule that inspection.
okay, because the day I went there, I guess I was frustrated, you were probably frustrated with me too, I'm sure. One of my questions is, oh my God, can't you just come down and say, yep, you need this, this, and that, and you're like, if you want to pay me twice, and I'm like, well, no. So, again, let's say Paul comes out, he does it, you come out and you're like, Paul, I need to move that 3 inches. Again, that's another cost, that's
It's-
another come out.
It's unlikely that would
Okay.
happen, Linda, I'll
But
be honest.
because I'm picking someone that I know's already done 3 and you've inspected, my odds are better, right?
Correct.
Probably?
I would assume so.
Okay, all right,
And to be clear, I'm not the only city official here when you ask for assistance. So hopefully, as a result of this format, the city hears you, and I think
Yeah.
Mayor Garcia was planning on joining us
Yeah.
via Zoom, but we couldn't get the
Well,
Zoom thing set up.
after talking to you, I reached out to Aaron Vega, who's a neighbor.
Yeah,
And I asked him, just as a neighbor, not as a city official, can you look into this? So he was surprised, and he's like, oh, don't do anything, let me look. He reached out to Josh. Then he sent me that email that was, I guess, put on Josh's page. Well, I'm not a friend with Josh, so I didn't see it. So if Aaron didn't reach out to me, I would have missed this tonight.
yeah.
So I think the city dropped the ball, kind of on, not just saying your department, but they dropped the ball. It's been, from what and again, I could be quoting this wrong, somebody told me today that it's been about 37 years that this has been on the books, that they've dropped the ball on doing this. And if it's been that many years, 30 days, again, you freaked me out. I was down there that day when I signed that paper.
I'll be honest, that's the idea.
I know,
And
but it
so-
worked. But I climbed up those stairs ready to
Right.
have a heart attack.
If I said 180 days,
No, but I
right, then in
climbed those
150 days, people would show up and say, oh my God, I only have 30 days left.
Right, but I climbed those stairs going, oh my God, took my lunch hour. I was like asking
there is
all
an
these.
elevator,
cra-
so.
Yeah, this big. No, there is. Oh, okay.
I
But-
fit, so I think you'll be okay.
But I don't know. I just think, again, can I afford it? Yeah. Are we going to go without eating? Absolutely not. But it's my home. Like, I just feel like, so we're going to save people, and I'm not trying to be, we're going to save people in 3-family houses to get you out if there's a fire. I want to save my tenants. I have, all the alarms. I have all the bells and whistles that I have to have. Well, what about the 2-family house? We're not worried about the people in 2-family houses?
That's a great question for the state.
I'm just saying, it just seems like there wasn't enough time. The ball was dropped. It should have been like a public meeting first. Let's talk about this. The city dropped the ball. Let's give our residents time. Maybe a bunch of city councilors could have got together, got some grant money available. We grant money for everything. We GoFundMe for everything. I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't want to get you aggravated because I don't want you to come find stuff in my house.
I don't normally get aggravated, so you're okay.
But,
But,
I'm just saying, for
um,
everybody, it's kind of a tough situation. It is. We have a lot of abandoned buildings in the city. We have trash we have, I hate to say bigger fish to fry, but we neglect sometimes going after our big problems. And then we've got all these honest people here wanting to do the right thing. And it's, I don't know, just kind of sometimes feels.
Understood. So I would look at it from a slightly different perspective.
You already told me the perspective because I was in your office.
Yeah, I'm an outsider, right? I live in the hills. I step outside and there's no natural light. It's darker outside than it is inside, okay? So that's where I live. But there's 540 properties that don't have certificates. On average, we're talking probably 6-unit buildings on average. Obviously, the bigger average with the smaller. So we're talking 3,200 units that don't have occupancy certificates. The average occupancy within each unit, say maybe 4 people, so we're talking 12,000 people occupying units that don't have a certificate of occupancy. That concerns me.
I get you. Like I told you, I follow all the rules. I'm a Holyoker, and I love my city. I'm just saying the way it is and how it came about. We just got that letter in the mail.
Understood.
Kind of just like, whoa, what am I? And I've lived there 64 years.
And I
so
will-
I've been a freeloader for 64 years.
I will fully admit, when you say the city dropped the ball, that might be a tough assessment of what happened, what my predecessors went through, because honestly, and again, I'll reference the fact that the state does a horrible job telling property owners what they're supposed to do, but it is a property owner responsibility to obtain these certificates. Now, why, when you buy these buildings,
They don't tell
your
you.
attorney doesn't say, does it have a certificate? I can't answer
I
that.
mean, because I've lived there, but I purchased it when my parents died and, bought out my share. So again, we have no mortgage, so for 15 years, they didn't say that when I went to reapply for a mortgage, when
Yeah.
I got the mortgage. So again, there's been many opportunities for
Sure.
someone to say to me in particular, hey, Linda, no one said that. The bank didn't care. Holyoke Credit Union didn't care. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird that all of a sudden the
And
question
for
of
most
why
of
now.
your
Yeah.
insurance companies don't ask,
Right,
and I don't
why
know why the
now?
insurance
Yeah,
companies don't
yeah.
ask, but
So
thank
I'll
you.
be seeing you soon.
Fair enough.
My house was converted from a single-family house.
Okay,
The 2 downstairs apartments have back doors that open right into the outside. Do they have to have the lit exit signs?
if the egress serves only one tenant, it's not a shared egress, then it does not need to be illuminated.
Okay.
So for example, I got a question, I believe yesterday, I don't know, they all blend together, yesterday from, it was a 2-family that they added an in-law unit to. So in the eyes of the state, it is now a 3-family because there are 3 separate dwelling units. But as a 2-family, it had a front door and a back door for both units. The in-law apartment has a front door and a back door from the in-law unit, so none of those egresses need to be lighted.
Okay,
Need to be
great.
lit,
Now,
sorry, not lighted.
upstairs, there are two doors that go into a little entryway to go through a single back door. My household occupies those two. I mean, so do you have to have an exit on
So that
That door?
hallway serves only one unit?
2 units, but right now, only one family? But that's temporary. I mean,
If they are
we sell the house, somebody else.
if they are separated units, then technically it would need to be lit with a sign.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I know many of you in the room. My name is Alicia Zoller, and I'm the director of the Office for Community Development over at City Hall. Jason and I have been working together, and Mayor Garcia did ask me to be here tonight. I've been sitting in the back, listening, taking in all the information. Our office is responsible for the administration of the federal funds that come to this city. So you're probably familiar with community development block grant funds. You've probably heard an awful lot about our ARPA, COVID recovery funds, and we also have another program where we receive funds from the federal government specifically for housing rehab. So one of my jobs and tasks that the mayor gave me tonight was to be here to hear from you, to see if there's ways that the city can use some of these federal funds to support you all in making these rehab and adjustments. One of the things that I would like to hear from a couple folks that have gotten quotes is I've heard $3,000 for the engineer.
No, that was just the electrician.
That was the electrician. Okay, so because one of the things, if we've got 500 properties, we need to be able to scale and figure out, is there money available? Is this how the city should be directing it? And then the other piece of this, and I just want to forewarn you, is if the city did determine that this was a pressing need and we opened up a grant application program for it, fortunately, the federal funds that come to the city are earmarked for low and moderate income families. And so any of the programs that we would be able to offer through my office would be earmarked for households at 80% area median income or less. And right now, you'd be surprised. A household of 4 in Holyoke, that income limit, we just looked at them yesterday, is about $88,000. So I'm going to guess that most of your tenants in your rental units are going to qualify, but I just want to kind of preface that grant programs that the city would offer would need to make sure that the occupants are low and moderate income. The other piece of that is it will take us a little while to kind of figure this out, roll out the application. So I can't even say to you that in the next 30 days, 60 days, we'll have money available. It depends on the funding source. It depends on the strings that come with that funding source. For instance, some of our programs have 20-year affordability restrictions. There's nothing I can do with that. That's a federal requirement. You receive a grant, then you agree that you will rent long-term to low and moderate income residents. Some folks don't want to be tied into those restrictions because it does travel with the sale of the house. So I'm just forewarning. So if folks have estimates and you want to briefly share those, you can either email them to me if you want to kind of throw them out, just so I have some idea of what we're looking at in scaling. And then the other piece of this is I would readily acknowledge, been with the city a really long time, I would readily acknowledge that this was probably a really tough letter to receive. We have a lot of wonderful property owners in the city. We also have a lot of property owners that would fail every single item on that 44-item list. You all are here because you are good landlords and good property owners. The folks that the city is really, and we have to treat everyone the same across the board, but I think Jason would agree with me that the folks that we really need to get to are probably not in this room. We have to treat everyone equally, though. The building conditions and the health conditions that we're seeing on a daily basis in this city are abysmal. We go into properties and we get phone calls for people whose children are covered in mice and roaches, who have, we had a situation recently, a property where, I'm sorry, yes. So reach out to me, thank you. But, you know, keep up the good work, and we're going to see what we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. I am a new landlord. I've only owned the house probably about a year, and they did a fire inspection when I purchased the home. So that fire inspection and everything that they did, that doesn't count towards this inspection?
The fire inspection covers smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. And what their 26G, I believe it's a fire code, basically says is at the time that building was constructed, do the existing smoke and CO detectors, do they perform the way they're intended based off of when the building was constructed?
Okay. So basically, it doesn't matter.
So
Yeah.
short answer, no,
No,
long
okay.
answer, yeah.
Also, I'm just a little bit still confused about what's considered to be an egress. I know you said people could show you pictures. I have a picture. I'll come later to show
Okay.
you if that's okay.
Basically,
But
yeah,
is it
I
an
know.
enclosed porch is considered an egress, and that needs to be inspected?
If there is a staircase that leads to the ground from the porch. So
Okay.
there are a lot of properties that the second floor hallway leads out to a porch or a patio that doesn't have stairs to the ground.
Okay.
That porch or patio does not need a certified engineer. But if it serves as a portion of the way to the safe area, we'll call it, for lack of a better word, then it would need to be.
Okay. Also, is there a way, I know you said that you are giving us an additional 30 days as like a favor, but is there a way to have it be longer than the 60-day time period? Like, is there a way we can request an extension only due to finances? Because like I said, I just bought the house. I just did a renovation. I just got new gutters. That was like $4,000. So, and this cost, based off what people are saying, is going to be like at least $2,000 to $3,000 for electrician. Then to have an architect person come out, that's going to be at least probably another $2,000 to $3,000. And we need this within 60 days to come up with $6,000. As a new landlord, that's going to be very hard for me to do.
So what I can tell you is that we have been trying to come up with a policy for leniency. When I say we, I mean a bunch of internal departments, the city solicitor's office, treasurer, tax collector, so on and so forth, as a way to recognize not only the costs, but those that are attempting to comply but having difficulties.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that policy has not been finalized at this time, but I hope it is soon. And once it is, it will be posted for everyone to be able to access. But the idea, or I can tell you what I hope it entails, which is for those individuals that may have, due to timing, may have accrued some fines as part of that system, if money is put into the building to comply, rather than be double penalized for it, then we subtract whatever amount is necessary for you to comply from that.
Who will be, also, I know there's a risk of having the $300, up to $300 a day fine. Who's issuing that fine? Is it the state, the city, or
City.
the building inspection? So you guys will directly send us a letter saying you owe $300, $200, $300, whatever it is, until this is fixed, and then we'll get a bill. And then what happens if we don't pay that bill? Or don't pay it on time, or like, how does that work?
Okay, so basically you've received that letter already, basically saying that if from 30 days of receipt of this notice, if you come up to snuff and you don't have your certificate, then the fines will start. There will be no bill really sent other than, and this is why we're trying to come up with a policy, when the city has adopted a state ordinance which allows fines, any municipal liens to be attached to tax bills. The idea is it will be attached to your tax bill, or if you come in for any permit, a lot of people come in for a permit of some kind, whether it be a dog license or something else. The way the tax collector's office is set up is if there are outstanding fines on the property, you will not receive that license or that permit.
Okay.
So that'll be the short-term solution. Whether it gets added to the tax bills or not is, what the policy is for, to try to, let's say, alleviate that before it becomes that situation.
All right, thank you for your time.
Yep, no problem. Yep,
I have one more question.
sure.
And I know you're probably not going to be able to answer. It's more for Big Brother watching us right now.
Fair enough.
I have 4 families in Worcester, Chicopee, and Springfield, and Holyoke. I've never got a letter of compliance from any one of them over 37 years. So why is it so important? Is it for tax funding for the city? I mean, grant funding for the city? Why is it so important in Holyoke and not on the others?
Well, I'll be honest, I'm completely surprised you say that about Worcester, because Worcester has a pretty stringent policy in place.
Worcester has a great landlord where we have monthly meetings that I go out there
Yep.
and they have guest speakers for lawyers, how to evict people,
Yeah, yeah.
and a whole lot of support.
Yep.
So, but I have never gotten one for compliance in Worcester.
Springfield, I know Springfield has taken it a step further than us, which is essentially issuing cease and desist, which was told landlords to get tenants out until you comply. So,
And that could be a gift.
well, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can tell you to get them out, it doesn't mean that we can make them get out, so. So, I'm a bit surprised by that. In a perfect world, honestly, we never collect one dime of a fine,
I get you.
right? Which is,
And I
you
really
receive the
don't- and I-
letter, you comply, we give you a certificate, everybody, we know the buildings are listed.
Okay.
My list is gone, instead of 540 without, we have 673 with, you know.
Okay.
That is ideally where I would love to be, but Mayor Garcia issued a statement a long time ago when this first started. I've been doing primarily apartment buildings since last July. And like I said, we started with the bigger, the landlords
The
with
property
multiple
management
buildings, the
companies
big
with-
property management companies. And it really started with, as I'm going around doing these rest of the inspections, I stop at a stoplight and think, well, this building doesn't look safe, and I write the address down. And I write the address down, and it kind of expands, and it's like, well, this person owns 18 properties, you know, why don't any of them have certificates? And then it was like, well, if we're gonna, like Alicia said, if we're gonna go after this property owner, it
You
has
have
to
to
be
go
all
for it.
property owners.
I totally get that.
And that's kind of how it expanded to where we are now with a full list, so.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey.
So when I got the letter, I went and I spoke to Michael,
Yep,
and he said that the metal ladders, they are not allowed anymore. So my house is a 3-family, but the 3rd floor doesn't have 2 exits, only has 1. And he recommended to hire an architect, so do a design and build like a whole porch all the way to the ground. That's gonna be like around 40, 50 grand. So what about if I cannot do that? So what's gonna happen? You know, because like that's a lot of money.
well, there's a couple of solutions to that. First of all, that unit probably should have never existed, because it
Well,
never
that's-
should have been created without a second egress.
The house, it was built in 1900.
Right,
Yeah, so,
but probably not as a 3-family.
well, passing inspection was a 3-family.
By who?
I don't know, when I bought a house, it was a 3-family already.
I can't speak to that. We can go back to the records if you want individually,
So-
but
But what's gonna happen if I cannot do that?
then it would have to be, you have a choice. You can either make it a 2-family, which a lot of people do. It probably is meant to be a 2-family anyway. Honestly, this happens all over. I'm sure we know these buildings exist where there's an attic and someone says, oh, I could put people up there. And then one internal staircase leads up to the attic and that becomes an apartment. That can't happen.
Well, the house has the third floor, and then it's another attic. I mean, not another, it's an attic on the top of the 3rd floor,
Okay.
so.
I mean, without going specifically to your site, but it has, Michael's right, it has to have 2 egresses. Fire escapes were supposed to die out 100 years ago. It was a temporary solution in New York City to try to provide some level of safety for people to get out. Nobody really expected they would be around, so the state does not allow ladder-based fire escapes to be newly installed now. One can be
Okay.
replaced if one existed, but not newly constructed. So it would have to be another form of an egress.
You're
It's a three-family.
Well, it sounds like he doesn't have a fire escape now. It sounds like he does not have a fire escape already. Do you mind if I pull up the property online? Okay. So
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
What's a certificate of occupancy? Does three-family homes need to have that? Or is that the same as what we're talking about tonight?
A certificate of occupancy is only issued when first constructed or there's some sort of major renovation that affects occupancy.
Okay,
So that's usually a one-time thing for most people, or with a major renovation might be two. Certificate of inspection is exactly what we're talking about, every 5 years, or for this building would be every 1 year, so on and so forth.
okay, thank you.
Yep. You mind if I have the address?
131 Westfield Road.
So is it this one or that one?
All right.
This one?
Call one tree, yes. Trees are gone.
All right, so this up here is its own apartment?
Yep.
We have an example that you'll probably be able to see the fire escape, I think.
Okay.
It's 217, 219 feet.
217 or 219?
It's both.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, our system only goes with the lower number, so I have to start there. Oh, good, also tree. Is it this one here or the blue one? Okay.
Keep going a little bit. Yep, and then if you swing to the side, our fire escape is on that side.
Well, it doesn't let me go. It won't go on the driveway. It won't go up the driveway. I mean, I love trees, but it's not helping.
Oh, right there, right there.
This right,
So that line that's going down is one of those fire escapes that you pull down.
this right here?
Yep, no, it opens closer to the porch.
Looks like you've got a corner.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
Oh, so the person is supposed to go out the window, stand on the roof, drop the ladder?
There's two ladders.
There is a flat porch, like just with a balcony around.
Okay. So if it's already there, then it's allowed to remain. That would need to be inspected to ensure that it's still structurally sound and suitable. Essentially, they're gonna check mounting brackets, they're gonna check, make sure the rungs of the ladder aren't fully rusted out. Technically, every fire escape is supposed to be fully painted, no visible signs of rust, so on and so forth. So if that registered design professional comes out and says that yes, as installed and as it sits, it's safe, then it can be, they'll certify it and we can issue a certificate.
Is there anything around the size of a window that needs to be the egress window to go out of? Just,
In general,
Yeah.
the way the building code is written, as far as egress windows, it varies. Massachusetts different than the international code. The international is everything second floor and above is 5.7 square feet for an emergency escape window. So about, we'll say 2 by 2'10" is about 5.7 square feet. On the first floor is 5 square feet, or 2 1/4 by 2 feet and a quarter by 2 feet and a quarter, about that. When fully opened.
Hi, I have a question. So every unit in a three-family house, including the first floor that goes straight out to the front porch, has to have light-up exit signs?
Say it one more time, I'm sorry.
So every single unit at both doors have to have light-up exit signs?
No. Just when you get to the point where you go to the outside, that has to have an exit sign.
So only at that, so if the second and third floor share a hallway, only those hallways need to have it?
At where you
Where
get
the
to the door that
doors.
leads to the outside, yes.
Okay.
Does not cover in any unit that doesn't need to have an exit sign.
Does every unit also need fire extinguishers in the
No.
kitchen?
No.
Okay.
Not
'cause-
not by our code.
Okay, that's interesting because a neighbor also has a three-family and called and they were told they needed to have fire extinguishers. We
In
were
the-
told they didn't.
In the hallways. in the common areas of egress, we don't even go into individual units, so therefore
Okay.
we can't mandate
They were
them.
told as part of this inspection, they had to have them.
So fire extinguishers have to be in the hall, in the common areas?
I'm just trying to understand, they were told one thing, we were told something else. I want to make sure. I bought the house 3 years ago from my parents that have had it for many years.
Yep,
And wasn't told of anything, went through every single thing to transfer the house, took the mortgage over.
yep.
I would have sold a 3-family house to make sure my parents had a safe place to live instead of sinking thousands of dollars. I'm not trying to be rich as a landlord. I'm getting help to keep my parents in a safe environment. But at the same time, now I got to raise the rent on my tenants that have been there forever because property taxes have skyrocketed, water and sewer has skyrocketed, every single thing in the city has gone up, but yet we're not getting anything as homeowners. And I'm sorry to say that, we're not getting anything. Our sidewalks, we can't even walk. My mother uses a walker and a cane. She can't even walk outside because she'll trip and fall because no one has done anything. We've complained numerous times, but yet we have to keep putting money out when there's houses that look like shacks and no one's doing anything to 1-family and 2-family houses. So how is that fair for the generations that have grown up in these 3-family houses to now have to come up with thousands of dollars to keep us in these houses?
Well, I can't answer your fairness question, and I apologize for that. All I can tell you is, state building code says it must happen. That is what we are tasked to do, is to uphold and enforce state building code. Fire extinguishers in the units, I wish who it was, I knew who it was that mentioned that to you, so I can make sure it's not repeated to anybody else, because per this code here, perhaps it was a Board of Health issue. Was it the building department or was it the Board of Health?
I believe they called off the notice, is what we were told. They called the notice and asked.
Yeah, because we do not have any governance over inside the unit for a certificate of inspection. So I apologize for that.
Well, listening to all of this, and, sort of, you haven't done this in 37 years, notices have gone out to hundreds of units. My experience in situations sort of like this is, if we get an electrician or a structural inspector, they'll be saying, we're booking into 2025. And it's it wouldn't be possible to get this done in 30 days.
Correct. So what I was trying to allude to before is part of our standard policy was in those situations in which there's one component of your compliance that requires extended amount of time. A lot of buildings need to put in an entire monitored fire alarm system. We realize that takes extensive amounts of time. So we will issue a temporary certificate until that component is complied with.
So you just keep good communication.
What we're really looking for is some sort of intention to comply, which the first step with that is turn in the application, let us know you're intending to get the certificate. Keep the communication lines open that, I found an architect and we have hired him or her to come out and do this inspection, but they told us they can't get here till October. All right, well then we'll make a note and ensure that we know that you're intending to move forward, and then, we'll follow up again closer to October to make sure they're still coming, October is a bit of probably an exaggeration. I haven't heard anybody say 5 months at this point, but it might be 30, 45, 60 days. That seems probably more likely. And we'll work with you. So that's what we want to do, because we want you to ultimately comply. So.
Hi.
Hi.
I own a 3-family house and have for 27 years, and for the past 4 years, I have chosen to use it as a single-family house.
Okay.
And haven't rented it out at all.
Yep.
And I have no intention on doing that in the future. What can you say?
In that case, I would suggest that you go to you can file an application for a change of use with our office.
Okay.
And convert it officially to a single family. And then we will issue you, essentially, this would be a new certificate of occupancy as a single family. We would notify the assessors that it is, and you'll be assessed accordingly as a single family, and therefore, it will legally be a single family, which these rules would not apply.
Even if there's 2 other units?
Well, that's where it gets, when I say a change of use, it would require some work by contractors somewhere to convert it back to a single family. It's not simply, I say it's a single family and it is.
Even with documentation that it hasn't been occupied?
So it really comes down to what it could be used for. So what we really care about is use, okay? So if it's set up as a 3-family, and we have buildings up and down, say, High Street, right, there is a business on the first floor and completely unoccupied on the remaining floors, okay? Whether it's in some form of renovation or they don't intend to use it. Though if there are no residential components actually occupied, then they only need the certificate when they intend to have it occupied. So what the code says is this cannot be occupied without the certificate, so if it's not occupied, the certificate is not necessary. In your situation, it gets tricky, right? So I would argue, in my opinion, as a single-family use, you would not need a certificate because you're not using it in the manner in which the certificate is intended for. But you, with the understanding that you would be in non-compliance if it was ever rented out, because you would need the certificate first. The easiest way to indicate that you don't intend to rent it out is to convert it to a single family. When I say easiest, I mean straightforward paperwork wise, not from a actual functionality wise. So it would require the non-separation of units, basically the removal of some doors, the tying in of a lot of the electrical work. You know, it's not.
Well, what if this is just a temporary thing until if we're looking to sell it, say, in 5 years or something?
Right.
You know?
So, right. That's the thing, is once you change it, then you'd have to file for a permit to change it back, okay? Which means you would have to meet current code, which 3 families require sprinklers, if you change it to a 3-family. So you don't want to do that, I'm assuming.
If she removes the stoves from 2 of the units?
It's not normally as simple as that, because you still have 3 separate meters, 3 separate electrical panels.
Can she prove that she has used electricity in those units or has it on her taxes claimed income? Can she?
Again, my interpretation would be, if you're using it as a single family and the other units are unoccupied with no intention to occupy, you would have no need for a certificate because they're unoccupied.
Okay.
That's my interpretation.
So, meaning right now, she doesn't have to go through this process?
Until she intends, or anybody intends to occupy the units.
It's okay as long as it's vacant, period. Yes.
I would say yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know, I have a two,
So, who's gonna determine that without having to change it? I don't want to have to go back and change and then change again. So you're saying that you would determine that? No occupancy?
I would.
I mean, I got.
What would satisfy?
I pay all the separate meters, you'll see that they're all under my name, the census, all that. Just, so there's proof there showing that.
Sure. So then what I would ask you to do is send in a letter to our office to state that it is being used by one family only. It is not being occupied by other parties. And I'm not the commissioner, but I will talk to the commissioner to make sure he is comfortable with accepting that as proof that it's not being used as a 3-family, as a multifamily, and that I would assume, would exempt you from that requirement.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a 3-family, it's a converted 2-family. Can I
Yep.
go back to the 2-family?
Can you?
Huh?
Can you go back? Is
Yeah,
it-
then
Yes.
Yeah, if it's on, then I'd be.
Change of use permit.
A
And
what?
if you file a change of use permit
Okay.
with a conversion from a 3-family to a 2-family, for most that were converted to a 3, it was adding a door somewhere to separate a staircase.
Because it's all, the utilities are separate, it's always been listed as, my utilities are separate, just 2 families. It's-
Yep,
it
and then
has
we,
separate utilities.
you can go through the
Does
process
the building
of,
department do that, or?
Yep.
Okay,
yep,
all right, thank you.
yep. Anybody else?
Actually, going back to that too.
Sure.
When I did call, they did tell me that I needed to convert. If I wanted to do that, I needed to convert. And I explicitly said again, you can look at what I have and what I've been paying for,
Yep.
on the meters, and I can show you my taxes.
Yep.
There's no need to show us taxes. But they told me I had to convert in order to.
Well, what I would ask you to do for both of you and for anybody in that situation is send in the letter like I mentioned. In response to the letter received, I am writing this letter to indicate that it's being used as essentially as a single family, as only one occupant. Therefore, it's not currently being utilized as a 3-family. We understand that if the other apartments were ever to be rented, we need the certificate first. And I will communicate with the commissioner to ensure that he is willing to accept that, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
I just want to show you the picture if it's done.
Picture of?
The house. You said we could show you pictures.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Is everyone done?
Yeah, is that everybody? All right, well, thank you. Thank you for coming. Hopefully,
Can I have popcorn?